Good evening. I'd like to call to order first the special meeting for the Hampton Township Council for September 13th, and we will start with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Blackburn?
Present.
Dr. Doherty?
Present.
Ms. Fritsch?
Present.
Mr. Kernick?
Present.
Dr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Speakman?
Present.
All right, before we begin the agenda tonight, as I'm sure many of you are aware, our former council president, Mike Peters, unfortunately passed away over Labor Day weekend after a very difficult and hard-fought battle with cancer. He was a friend to most of the people in this room and a dear friend to several of us. Mike was a long-term resident of the township. In fact, I believe he graduated from the high school when the high school was still where the middle school is today, which is a piece of history along with many others that I learned from Mike. Mike dearly loved this community, and in the 4 years that he spent in this chair, he poured his heart and his soul into serving this community. So I would appreciate it if you would all join me in a moment of silence in honor of Mike. Thank you. Excuse me. The first item on the agenda tonight is citizens' agenda matters. So if anyone has anything that they would like to address to council, please step to the podium and state your name and your address.
Hello, my name's Al Whirling, lifelong resident. Currently reside in Talakavy Road. And I'm going to try to shorten this as much as I can. My neighbors come to me as the go-to guy. Runaway pet, flat tire in a driveway, black snake under the laundry machine, doorbell camera goes off. They want me to go check on their doors. And they don't judge me, the way I live, the way I dress. And I love them. And they love me. Here's the gist of it. The conversations always end with, "It's just too bad about that car wash." Everybody shakes their head, and I don't know if they're putting it on my shoulders to do something about it, but I guess that's why I'm here tonight. I'm familiar with this room. Just last month, the restaurant at the bottom of Wildwood Hill, Wildwood Road, if council all voted that Minio's could put their lunch boards all over the intersection of Route 8 and Wildwood, that certainly is going against the zoning code binder that I paid $13 for a copy 20 years ago. And I don't know what tree the decibel meter was held behind when all my neighbors came up when that car wash turned on. And they were all up here complaining. And lo and behold, it was right in there. But if my neighbors found out that I was up here and got some sway out of it, all the members to come, that car wash doesn't have a name, a sign, a phone number. The address is small enough to be legible with a pair of binoculars from Wildwood Road Extension. And I'm not gonna get on my hands and knees, but I will. Something needs to be done with the sound and the horn at the end of the turbines that dry the cars in that car wash, because I see it wearing on my neighbors, and I would like for the zoning vote to swing it in our direction. When I'm birding, that car wash can be heard in the back of Devlin's Point, all the way up to Anderson's Trucking Company. And I don't want to cut my grass in the front of my house, because every time I go out there to do a little bit of yard work and that car wash comes on, I just hope somebody gets caught with their pants down. Thank you.
Amanda, can we look in to see if they're violating any of our noise ordinances?
Yes.
Excuse me.
We can, and I certainly will.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to address to council this evening? All right, moving on to administration then.
Madam President, item A under administration is my recommendation to advertise an ordinance establishing a memorandum of understanding terms and conditions of employment agreement for Ryan R. Jarosky. And I believe you have a copy of all that information in your packet. What you'll be doing is advertising the ordinance with the possibility of adopting it at the end of this month.
Did anyone have any questions related to the ordinance? All right, then can I get a motion to advertise the ordinance establishing a memorandum of understanding of terms and conditions of employment for Ryan R. Jarosky?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Blackburn?
Favor.
Dr. Doherty?
Favor.
Ms. Fritsch?
Favor.
Mr. Kernick?
Favor.
Dr. Johnson?
Favor. All right, and I'll take the next item. I am recommending the appointment of Ryan R. Jarosky as the municipal manager effective Friday, February 2nd, 2024. Could I have a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Dr. Doherty?
Favor.
Ms. Fritsch?
Favor.
Mr. Kernick?
Favor.
Ms. Blackburn?
Favor.
Dr. Johnson?
Favor. Congratulations, Mr. Jarosky.
Lori, you guys want to take these pictures now? Sure. I think you need to head on up there.
All right. Oh, I do just want to add a note that Mr. Jarosky will be starting employment with the township effective November 6th, 2023, for the purpose of transitioning to the municipal manager's position.
See, Ryan, in the future, you have to sit on the floor.
Sit on the floor.
You're right behind.
You're bringing tall people up here.
That's not my fault. Okay. The next item in this agenda is other business. It's a presentation by Township Bond Legal Counsel Ronald Brown regarding the advertisement of an ordinance establishing the use of interest earnings derived from the investment of the 2019 and 2022 special revenue bond issues. If I can, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council and other representatives of the township. I am Ronald Brown from the law firm of Dickey, McCamey, and Chilcote. Have served for a number of years as your bond counsel, and the township's been in the enviable position of having borrowed for its most recent bond issues, 2019, 2021, and 22, when interest rates were at their lowest in decades. And so your interest payments on your bonds are at the lowest in that history. And within the last year or two, with interest rates rising dramatically, the bond proceeds that will over time be expended on your projects are being invested energetically in interest rates that are leading to significant interest earnings on your unspent bond proceeds. And so the one of the benefits of that is that there are approximately $2 million in interest earnings that have been accrued over the last, essentially the last year to year and a half. And council and the township are in the position to be able to earmark those monies for projects that were originally not able to be covered by a source of funds, but those projects now have the interest earnings that can support those three projects. And I've been asked to prepare a draft ordinance. The ordinance should specify that the monies that would be intended to be applied to these projects would be the interest earnings on your 2019 and 2022 bond issues. So the request is for council to approve the advertising that ordinance that would be presented at a subsequent meeting for approval, for enactment, and then you'd be in a position to earmark those monies for those three projects. So that's the purpose of this request and presentation tonight. And so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions on the request.
Just a clarification on timing. Because of the manner in which this would have to be advertised, you won't be looking to vote on it again until October. So you see it again in October. Ron will need some time to put together the advertisement. We're going to need at least a week or so to get it in.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to meet the 27th deadline.
So you said it would be, and I apologize, Jerry will probably have something way more important to ask, but you said it would be earmarked for those three projects?
Yes.
And how does it appear in, like, as a revenue item in our?
Well, I'm not able to answer that, but the point is that the both federal tax law and the State Debt Act would enable you to treat these additional interest earnings as bond proceeds, so that you are essentially, by way of the ordinance, authorizing the expenditure of these available interest earnings on those capital projects. So I don't know how that's done in terms of capital budgeting, but you've now matched a resource with a set of projects that can be then financed.
And so your ordinance would actually state the three projects?
Yes.
Yeah. You want to take it, Jerry?
But, so my point is going to be, the verbiage currently in the proposed ordinance indicates one or more of the projects. So that means there could be other projects that could be addressed outside of those that are specified in Appendix A. Additionally, let's just take the Clearview, which is the principal one. It's stated in there as $1 million. It may very well be $1.5 million. So we would look for the flexibility to be able to do that project with those proceeds and not be limited to the $1 million that is specified in Exhibit A, and then deal with the outfall afterwards. And if there are other projects that we can fund, we can address
Yeah,
those as well.
I would think two things. Number one, the intention is for the ordinance to say one or more of those projects. They have flexibility. The other may be that we may want to look closely at how much interest earnings there are, in that that number may be a little higher than 2 million, and there's no sense capping it at 2 if there's the ability to
Yes.
transfer or to earmark some additional money. It might be if it's a couple $100,000 a month, we may be at a point where you can identify that number as 2,250,000 or something, to take it as high as it can go.
And is this a two-step process where initially there's a vote on the ability to spend it on projects, and then there's another vote to actually spend it on the projects? Is that the
Correct.
way it
Oh, yeah.
works?
You-
Okay,
you
is
need
that
to
going to
see-
be clear from the ordinance?
Well, we'll make sure it says that.
Okay.
If it needs to, then we'll include that. But no, there's no question that this just simply identifies a source of funds for the normal capital projects, budgeting and procurement. That
Right.
would have to take the separate steps that does.
Right, just procedurally to answer your question for you. Keep in mind that no capital projects in Hampton can be done without the permission of council, even if they're a budgeted project. So you're actually going to get a chance to vote on it 3 times. Once to convert the interest over for capital project spending. Second, for the budget itself to identify the project. And then third, for the project itself when that project comes up. So we'll use Clearview Road Bridge. We go through the process, we have the monies available, we transfer the appropriate funds out of the bond capital monies that we have. We put it into the capital improvement fund. Then we get you to approve the budget for the Clearview Road Bridge, which in this case will be around $1 million. And then you have to then agree to approve the Clearview Road Bridge project, which you've done partially already by awarding the bid, but you'll have to release the funds in the '24 budget. So you'll actually get a chance multiple times to be able to review it and to go from there.
And the fact that it says one or more gives us flexibility.
It does. And to Jerry's point, knock on wood, I don't think, but the Clearview project might be only $800,000. It's not going to be. It's going to be over $1 million. But anyway, you could do it in reverse. You can move money around based on it. The most important thing here is that, to Mr. Brown's point, we may want to consider a range a little bit higher than 2 million, because when you started to say what you were saying, we're averaging about 200,000 a month. So at that rate of earnings, we're going to pass. I think we've passed 2 million already. We're probably going to pass 2.5 million by the end of the calendar year. We figure for arbitrage purposes, we're going to have to set aside a portion. But while we're still working through the 24 calendar year, we're going to still continue earning. So we may have 2.5. We may want to pick an up to number.
Do we need to specify a number, or can we just specify that the proceeds from the bonds,
Interest earnings from
interest earnings? Can we just be general? Do we have to specify a number?
I don't have, there's no particular requirement that I'm aware of that you'd have to say a specific amount is being made available. I think you might want to say something, if you want to take that route, it would be interest earnings on the particular bond issues, excluding that amount necessary to provide for arbitrage rebate payments that are going to have to be made. And those, are going to have to come out of that total interest earnings. If you wanted to do it without setting a number, I'd suggest that language.
It looks like Jerry agrees with that. And just to clarify, we are not going to be painting ourselves into a corner for any particular projects. So if Clearview Bridge does come 800,000 or even more under budget, we can be optimistic. We might be able to use the funds for another project.
You could, but and most importantly, keep in mind this is interest earnings. This is
Yes.
not the contingency
Yes.
that was built into the bond issues for the project.
Yes.
I think you know what you need to do.
I have that, yeah. And since I have the mic, I just want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for having the good fortune of having worked with your manager
Oh, thanks, man.
over, I'm thinking back, Chris, the first bond issue was 1997.
I was going to say.
And, it's been a pleasure working with Chris and working with the whole team here. And I can't say how much I appreciate his insight in these kinds of projects and financings and timing and just taking care of all of the preparation leading to very successful financings here, and then the application of those proceeds. And I hope to be working in the future with your new manager, Mr. Jaworski. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Anything else for other business?
Not tonight.
All right, then we will adjourn the special meeting and go directly into our agenda meeting. And we'll start with the first item, please.
Well, if I can take items A and B together, because that's probably the easiest way to do it, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Well, item A is an ordinance establishing the terms and conditions of employment of Ryan, and then B is a resolution establishing terms and conditions of employment for Ryan again. And let me explain the thought process here of the negotiating team when we did this. As most of you know, there is a maximum number of months in which you can enter into a personal services contract with the municipal manager, which is 24 months. If you entered into the contract effective November, then it would run out in November of 25. The thought process was to maximize your capability. So the ordinance establishes kind of a bridge, if you will, agreement from November until February the 1st. And then the actual agreement itself will continue on February the 2nd. All subsequent agreements can be in resolution form after the ordinance is passed. So that's why you have to do the ordinance first with the agreement attachment, and then the resolution would follow. Then you would be in a position, and of course Ryan would be in a position to clearly understand the terms and conditions of his employment straight through the end of the 25 calendar year. And then at that particular point, you deal with it like you've dealt with my situation. As part of the 25 budget process, I would expect that, and knowing Ryan only a short time, but he's shrewd enough to know how to negotiate, he will take the appropriate steps to work with you on a new agreement and then go from there. But you'll have plenty of time to work through the processes with him. So you're not looking at anything. The backbone of that agreement is the agreement I work with. It is nothing that's changed.
There's a couple tweaks, but.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously. There had to be a few. But, I mean, we tried to make sure it was nothing that surprised you. We were trying to stay. And if you have any questions with regard to the component pieces of the agreement, within reason, I'm more than happy to address them. If we get into a little bit of detail, I would ask if we take it to executive session. It's a personnel matter. So however you want to proceed.
Did anyone have any questions related to the ordinance or the resolution? Does not seem so. So item C, please.
Can I
Nope.
just, I'll jump in and that if you will, the negotiating team, which was myself and Carolyn and Chris, conferred and collaborated, and we were fortunate to be able to, with the advent of technology, to stay in touch
Boy, were
with
we ever.
Ryan as he was traversing Switzerland
Yeah.
during this entire negotiating time. And so from the beginning of our decision by council and extending the initial offer to be able to be in contact with him and to have the dialogue back and forth. So we appreciate the timeliness of that connectivity, because it was important to be in where we are tonight in being able to move forward.
Yeah, he did do an excellent job getting back to us. We did have one interesting conversation where you said, well, good night. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, I'll continue working for the afternoon. But besides that, it worked out pretty well. And I think we gave you as a group what you were looking for.
Right, and actually now would probably be the time to mention that we held, obviously, an executive session to discuss this on August 26th. So need to make that known since we haven't had a meeting since then. All right, anything else?
None of those two items.
Item C then, please.
Item C is the advertisement of an ordinance establishing a strategy for the use of the investment earnings derived from the township's 19 and 2022 bond issues. Mr. Braun covered that. I don't believe we need to go any further with that. Okay, item D is the 2024 minimum municipal obligations for the general employees pension plan, the police pension plan, and the general employees defined contribution pension plan. There was a memo that I forwarded to the attention of Mr. Speakman, which I believe I copied all of you as well. was dated September the 6th, in which I identified the 23 contributions and the 24 contributions. I'm not going to get into them individually. The good news is that the 24 contributions as compared to the 23 are $148,641 less. So therefore, we will be able to budget less for that process.
All right, did anyone have any questions? All right, next item, please.
This is the one I kind of enjoy. Item E is the development of the 2024 budget development goals and objectives. Now, I know you're all busy, and I know you're all working hard, but if there is something that you want to be part of the budget development goals and objectives, you need to let me know, because by the next council meeting, and please don't let me know like on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, okay? If you could let me know like by the end of the week or maybe early next week, I'd like to include them in the budget development goals and objectives. If not, we'll do what we've always done for you. Township department heads have already forwarded me a number of them, plus there's ones that are continuous. One on budgeting is continuous, it stays in it. But we would like to have this adopted at the end of the month because the budget process is beginning to get underway. And again, if you have anything in particular that you'd like to include, within reason, because Jerry's over there, I'd like to make sure that I can have it included and put into the document. And if you're not sure what it is, I mean what I'm talking about, if you open up your budget book, a couple pages, you'll see budget development goals and objectives, and it lists everything that we're doing for 23. This is everything you're going to be doing for 24.
Those two over there keep smiling at me.
Well, I know. They've done a good job conniving already. Any other questions on their budget development goals and objectives? And Ryan, I'm not crazy. This is usually a fun moment. If you were here in 2 weeks, you'd say, they'll say, where'd that one come from? But anyway, I know. Okay, the next item is an item that's actually somewhat of a surprise, mainly because it was funded. The township applied for what's called an ARLI grant, which is an automated red light enforcement grant. And believe it or not, we got it for safety improvements for South Pioneer Road. Now, the reason why it's a surprise is because most ARLI grants are given for intersection improvements, traffic lights. This one's given for the replacement of guardrail up and down South Pioneer Road and the the construction of rumble strips in the center lane and the redoing of the intersection at West McNeil Road and South Pioneer. I would like to say the reason why they funded it is because the township's administrative staff is so super that we can keep getting these grants left and right, but I have a feeling that they had $175,000 left over, and they said, we've worked with you in the past, and if you would take this grant, we'll certainly provide it. So it really isn't budgeted for. To make a long story short, we have a $25,000 match. That's an automatic. Engineers throw that in just to make sure we qualify. Your choice, ladies and gentlemen. We have the funding available if we want to do it. The grant reimbursement program is easy for us to figure out because we've already done it twice before in the last 2 years. This will be the third one. If you're okay with it, I would like you to authorize it at the end of the month. I'll treat it like it's a capital project. So then you will be bidding it. Now, the guardrail can be replaced by CoStars, through CoStars, but the others would have to be bid. So.
Jerry, your thoughts on whether we can afford it?
And it's
Yeah. I mean, it's only, the impact on us is only the 25,000.
25,000.
We got timing issues, but that's, we can manage that, so.
If it goes over 200,000, are we responsible for more?
We are, but you could reject the bid values. What we'll do is we'll bid it in steps. So the center rumble strips would be one, the intersection would be two. You can reject one or the other. We don't have, the grant doesn't mandate that we have to do all of it. It just mandates that we have to take the monies and apply to one of those three items.
Okay. Sounds like a total no-brainer.
I normally, as Mr. Speaker would tell you, I would never put this on the agenda because you didn't budget for it, but it is a total no-brainer. That's
Yes.
the reason why it's here.
And it's not putting in an automated, like a red light
No.
camera?
No.
Is it for the entirety of South Pioneer?
From West Hardee's to Route 8.
Wow.
We'll take our best shot at it, see if we can do it.
Yeah.
And will there be improvements to the Wick Line intersection? You guys know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're
Making
talking
a
about.
right turn out of there is very difficult.
Yeah, most of the problems with regard to that intersection have to do with sight distance. Other than realigning Wick Line itself, which I don't think you're going to be able to do unless you're able to acquire property from the adjacent property owners. I don't know what you're going to be able to do with that.
Mirror?
No, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and our transportation engineer will recommend against mirrors because they distort.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is people, unfortunately,
make it, yeah.
yeah, they think I can make it, and then they get unfortunately in an accident, and then we're sued because of the fact that the mirror was put up and we authorized it. So we usually don't work with mirrors. If you really feel that something needs to be done with that intersection, I'll just add it to my successors list, and he can address it next year.
I mean, what about like a permanent speedometer? You know, those temporary ones to let people know how fast they're going over that hill?
Everybody's aware how fast they're going over that hill. They don't care.
That's true.
But those do tend to encourage people to slow down a little bit.
Well, isn't that where the rumble strips kind of solves that?
That's only in the center.
Yeah,
though,
those will
right?
be the center to make sure they don't cross over.
I'm smiling because I don't think the township's police department wants us to put up any speed devices in that area. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. We'll explain later at a later time.
I defer to the chief.
All right, does anyone have any additional questions? All right, next item, please.
Item G is the endorsement of the township's 23-24 insurance renewals. As you recall, or I hope you can recall, last month we talked about how they were not provided to us in a timely fashion. We do have them all. There's a memo that was forwarded to Jerry's attention, which you were copied, dated September the 6th. To our pleasant surprise, the variance difference between 23 and 24 is only 1.97%. We were really expecting more like a 14 to 15,000 or 15% hit. So we're very pleased with it. Now, there is one thing you should be aware of. We're a member of MRM's trust for our packages. There is a mitigation, a reimbursement that the insurance carrier gives based on your losses versus your premiums. We're not going to get one. Our losses are exceeding our premiums by a little bit. Not anything dramatic, but we're just not going to get the mitigation. But the rates are well within the scope of what we were wanting. So, and if we were working outside of the trust with a regular carrier, we wouldn't have mitigation. So at the end of the month, we're just looking for you to endorse the package and get it onto the record.
And still waiting on the cyber.
We're still waiting on cyber because of the fact we have to do multifaceted authentication. And IT is currently in the midst of doing that. There's two methodologies that IT can employ. One is very convenient for the township employees, but takes a very long time to install. The other is the one that Susan and I and Mrs. Lipke are going to go through in the next couple of weeks is the guinea pigs. Every morning what happens is we turn on our computers, we punch in our password, and then we receive a prompt on our cell phone. Then we have to punch in the code off of our cell phone. So it's multifaceted. And if that works and there's no objection to that, then we'll spread it through the organization. And then at that particular point, we will qualify for cyber insurance. They will not write the coverage unless you have a multifaceted environment.
I will say that I experienced that on many, many accounts that I log into, so I don't think that should be a problem.
No, it is a huge change for our employees because of the fact that we now have to ask employees on their personal cell phones as well as their work cell phones to take the authentication codes. So we'll
Take it via email, typically.
Well, you can't get into the email because it freezes you out until you authenticate the code. So,
And even if you did it that way, you can still be using email on your personal device.
Mm-mm.
So what's the difference?
Welcome to the real world, the new world, as they say. We will take the appropriate steps to make sure we can take care of the cyber insurance. They're prepared to write it. They're waiting for us to verify it. We're not concerned. And by the way, we have, if I could, and we have to write cyber insurance because of the fact, well, here's one you guys might not know about. Because of the fact of our interaction with the water authority and all of the utility billing accounts that have bank account numbers attached to them. So that's the main reason why we want cyber insurance, because they are resting on servers that we maintain.
All right, did anyone have any questions? Jerry, I thought you had a question that was interrupted.
Just, we expect the premium to be comparable to
We
last
do.
year's.
We do.
All right, item H, please.
Item H is the community library lease and personnel agreements. If you recall, we talked about this a couple months ago. The rules have changed with regard to how libraries are funded. You cannot use square footage arrangements. So therefore, the library has requested that the agreement that we have in place be redone. As a courtesy, I sent them a copy as well as yourselves after we had redone it. Not surprisingly so. They made some adjustments. Frankly, they don't seem to be a big deal to me, one way or the other. But if there is a concern, we'll be more than happy to address it. The same with regard to the personnel agreement. They're straightforward. Adding a word for group insurance, to better defining the defined compensation account or contribution account. These are really nothing changes, but they need to have these agreements in place when they file for funding for the 24 calendar year.
So what rules changed as far as the square footage?
Okay, without trying to get too tricky of how we did this. When the township bonded the community center, we took the library and we defined the actual space by square footage, which is 4,400 square feet. That enables the library to qualify for a prorated funding allocation through the Commonwealth in conjunction with, there's a calculation form I have to fill out for them every year. And when I fill out the calculation form, it's based on how the utilities are paid, the janitorial services, the debt service, everything. When you fill that out, then you have to base the library's reimbursement value on something. So we based it on the square footage to prorate it. We have a 51,000 square foot community center, 4,400 square feet. They get that percentage value. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania came out and said no more prorating by percentage. It has to be by straight recognized cost. So you contribute $92,000 to the library every year, and then they write you a check for $92,000. They will make an adjustment around that. And as Mr. Speakman clearly knows, and as you as a group should know, the mechanism for that funding source goes away at the end of the 26 calendar year. So you will have to tackle how you're going to handle funding the library or having the library operate in that for the 27 budget. For those of you who don't clearly understand, the library is a standalone organization. They are a 501c3, they have their own board. All we do is we basically make their life easier by leasing back their employee to them and have that employee paid through us and through this agreement so they can get the funding that they need. They have about a $250,000 budget, give or take. So that's the reason behind it. And at the end of this month, if you would approve it after we clean it up, we would appreciate it so we can get it to the library for their signature.
So we need to figure that out.
No, they figured it out.
No, I mean in 2 years.
For
It's
27,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, in 2 years, you're going to have to take a long look at what you want to do with the library.
5 years, right? 4 years.
Well, not really. You're going to have to know what you want to do in the 27 calendar year, and here's the reason why. You're going to have to put a basis of funding in place for the Commonwealth moving forward. And if that means you take them in-house, it's a totally different means of calculation than you do now.
So probably researching how other municipalities do this would be very helpful.
I'll tell you what, to be quite honest with you, you have a superstar librarian. She can come in here and tell you that right now. So whenever you're ready, just bring her in and have her go through the whole process with you.
The other option is we just lease it to them for $92,000 and they pay us $92,000.
Well, you can do that, but the problem you're going to have is you're going to have to come up with a basis of why the $92,000 was calculated. Rental income, okay, is not considered for funding offset unless it's based on debt service value. The $92,000 was their share of the debt service.
So even though it's in the operating fund,
The $92,000?
yeah.
Yep. We consider it like we give them a contribution so they can qualify for
Right.
the $92,000, which they can then use for funding purposes through the Commonwealth and through ACLA.
Okay.
All right, but you have to base the $92,000 on something that's acceptable, and rent is not it. We said debt service. That's where that $92,000 came from. Now, there won't be any debt service after the January payment in 2027.
I see.
With all due respect, guys, worry about it.
Yep.
Like 2 years from now. I mean, you got a lot of time. But obviously you have to, I mean, the library's taking up a huge chunk of your community center. You just can't say, well, it's been nice talking to you, and there's the door. I don't think that will really work out well. But you have plenty of time. Next one, okay? Itemized Cross Creek, unless there's any questions. Okay, Cross Creek Township, the residents at the end of Cross Creek, there's 4 houses in the cul-de-sac. And if you've not had an opportunity to go up and sit in the cul-de-sac for a few minutes, I would recommend you go up in the cul-de-sac, get out of your car and just stand there. And you won't hear anything but the turnpike. I mean, nothing. Even if there's a person next to you talking to you, it is very, very loud. The township tried 3 years ago to intervene on behalf of the residents to build a sound barrier with the turnpike. The turnpike said absolutely not. They had already done the improvements to the pike and they were not going to entertain anything. We then asked them if we paid for it, would they entertain it? Absolutely not. It's in their right of way. They won't do it. The residents in the township at that particular point figured, well, that was the way it is, and there's nothing we can do, and we're just going to have to go from there. Got a call from a resident about 18 months ago saying, what can we do to get at least some vegetation, something put up there? I said, well, it's going to be a long, drawn-out affair. It was. I'd like to thank Lori Mizgorski's office and Rob McCurry's office, especially their chiefs of staff who were fabulous, Barbara and Kim, in getting us through this process. To make a long story short, the Turnpike has agreed, pretty much, to pay $20,000 to the residents to make them go away. That's what this is really all about. That the residents know that's the best they can get. The Turnpike will not contract with the residents. They said, we'll contract with the township, but we will not contract with the residents. We want you to be intermediate. So thus you have an agreement. That's what the agreement is for. The Turnpike Commission, have already approved it. They are just waiting for you to do it, and they will cut us a check for $20,000. We will then in turn employ JML Landscaping, and their proposal is attached, which we use to come up with the $20,000 for the Commonwealth to do all the work. The reason why we're picking JML twofold: one, with township, you don't want to use your own people to do it. Number two is they will guarantee the vegetation. So if they plant something and it dies, they will come back out and replace it. I wish I could tell you this will make this problem go away. It will not. It is a very difficult problem. I'm not even sure a sound barrier would make it go away. The backyard, the back deck of the one house can't be 30 feet from the property line. I mean, it is right up against the property line. And there's a fence, and then there's the turnpike, and that's it. And they have all kinds of pine trees and things already planted in. But this is what they wanted. This is the best we can do. And that's the reason why it's on your agenda, because the turnpike will not deal with the residents independently.
So do we know the caliper of the trees? Are going to be cute little things?
Not real cute little things. They're going to be like mid-size.
Yeah.
I think it was 4 inches, 4 inches.
4-inch caliper is
Yeah.
pretty stout for a new tree, yeah.
So the initial memo says there's 4 properties, but then the work says it's only going to be on one of the properties?
2.
Well, it only lists one address.
Well, I understand that, but it's going to roll into the second one. The other 2 property owners don't see any value in it. But the 4 property owners were the original ones who started this process. And I know Dr. Johnson's on it. I mean, I seriously, if you really want an understanding, all you have to do is pull in the cul-de-sac, get out of the car, and just sit there for a few seconds.
Yeah.
It is truly amazing.
Were those homes there before that project?
No, what happened was the Turnpike works about 5 years ahead of public projects with public hearings. Once they conduct their public hearing, that's it. I mean, whatever input you want, like a sound barrier, for example, the development, I think, came in 2 years after that public hearing. And then it was built. And this is a true catch-22. I mean, it was no secret to the 4 residents when they bought the house how close the Turnpike was. You couldn't miss it. I just don't think anybody could gauge the actual sound problems associated with it. So the Turnpike's position, of course, is any, I mean, I can't blame them, is, hey, you knew what you bought when you bought it. And, of course, the resident's position is, well, that doesn't make the problem go away. It literally, and they'll invite you in the houses, by the way. Mr. and Mrs. Fitzsimmons in particular. I can tell you, you'll sit in the living room in the middle of the house, you can hear everything going up and down the Turnpike.
Are they vinyl sided?
Some are brick and some are vinyl sided.
Well, I just want to say, I mean, when I helped with the Dick's Sporting Goods project at the airport, we did a lot of sound studies. Triple glazed windows, I mean, you have to spend a lot of money to keep the sound out from the inside of the house. You need thermal mass, and that's really hard.
I don't see how they could ever recoup the cost that would be necessary for the houses. So, again, this is the reason why it's on there is because the Turnpike will not deal with them directly, and they know that. So, I don't know how to describe it any other way than this. This is the best we can do with a very bad situation.
I think it's great that
It's the best we can do.
you're doing something. I think that's very positive.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions with regard to that item?
Doesn't look like it.
Well, with that, I will defer to my colleague from the police
All
department.
right. Public safety, please, Chief.
I have nothing unless there are questions. I know that Mr. Todd, which I don't see present tonight, was supposed to be on the agenda, but,
He is, correct. 2 weeks.
oh, in 2 weeks, okay. Yes, Mr. Todd will be here about his bike drive that we do every year. We help escort them down Route 8. So,
Or he's also going to be here for presenting the First Responders Picnic Tug of War Championship Trophy. And I don't even know who won, but I gather it wasn't the police department.
we choose not to embarrass ourselves in public.
So you use the workers' compensation excuse again, right?
That's a good idea for next year, yeah.
All right. Anything else then for public safety?
No, I have nothing.
All right. Community services, please.
Madam President, this item is going to be, this project is going to be funded through the Stormwater Management Fund for the rehabilitation and maintenance of the Community Park Pond in accordance with the MS4 requirements. There are 3 phases to this project. The first phase is clearing of all the trees around the pond. There's approximately 80 to 90 trees that'll have to be cleared. The second phase is the actual work, which will include identifying and remediating the unknown discharge from the pond, the redesign of the outlet structure to maximize the stormwater management capacity, reestablishing and stabilizing the embankment, establishing a forebay to provide stormwater pretreatment and reduce sediment deposits in the pond, and install an aeration system to reduce the algae and increase the water quality. The third phase is to establish a pond aquatic educational trail and tree plantings back around the pond. At this time, I'm requesting authorization at the regular meeting to advertise just for the tree clearing. The estimates had originally come in about $65,000 to $80,000. After the final designs, we feel that it's going to be a little bit lower than that. And that we're asking in October to award that contract with work starting in November. We had hoped to do all 3 phases in 2023, but because of the design of the project and just actually, honestly, the engineers were trying to find where the outfall was, where the water is flowing. So it was a little delayed. But the remaining 2 phases will hopefully start at the beginning of next year, sometime early.
All right. Does anyone have any questions about the project?
Is this something that's required for us to do?
It's a capital project, and yes, there is some work that needs to be done to the outfall and the structure of the pond itself. So it is considered one of the credits for the MS4 program.
Do we really need to take out that many trees, though?
Yes, unfortunately.
This is also a part of the comprehensive park master plan.
Yes.
And to reiterate something that Ms. Burnett said, we literally do not know where the water's going. I mean, we're not exaggerating. We have checked everywhere. We've even checked Jim's sanitary sewer lines that run adjacent to it. We cannot find out where it's discharging.
Yeah.
We think there's a possibility it could be discharging into the Wildwood mine, which is below us. But we're not really sure where yet. That's part of what we're going to have to. It's kind of like a seek and find endeavor for phase 2. But phase 1 has to be completed first before we can even gain access to the area.
I see.
And a lot of those trees, they do have to be removed, but also once it's done, the public will be able to use it a lot more. It's hard to gain access for the one side, so to have the trail around it. But just, I remember when I was a little girl, we used it all the time, and there were no trees there at all. So just easy access to the pond. Right now, you cannot get to it, so.
And
All right.
we can, and if you want, which is something at a later date you can decide, you could connect the new community park trail to that trail very, very easily by paralleling the back of the Rotary Pavilion.
At one point, you guys were talking about dredging the lake.
That may still have to be done as part of the next phase. It depends on if they can find the outfall. I mean, I know this sounds kind of weird. We literally cannot find the outfall. Now, we know it has to be drained somewhere because we know water's going into it. We just cannot find where the water's coming out at all. So we've even flirted with dye testing it.
So maybe this is a silly question. Is this a man-made pond or
Yes.
a long time ago?
I believe
Because
it was.
you can't find any kind of
Oh, no.
design.
There's no as-built. It was part of the original O'Rourke farm purchase in 1963.
Something like that, yes.
So it's been here forever.
Longer
Where's the
than you.
Wildwood mine?
You're sitting on
On
it.
it?
Well, the whole township is sitting
Oh,
on it.
yeah, okay.
They're not as far down as you'd think.
Yeah.
That's the entrance. That was the old entrance.
Oh, is it?
What was the old entrance?
Down by Raw Training.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
right next to it.
So,
You wait.
Oh.
So because she's turned a little bit different colors. You are safely above the Wildwood line.
Maybe could have started with that. That would have been helpful.
Especially since Harry's sitting on the audience. We are safely above the Wildwood.
It's all undermined, yes.
Everything's undermined in the
Yes,
township.
okay.
Allegheny County, yes.
Yes, there's a reason why I have mine insurance. However, I was just making sure that.
so going back to the trees, right? So you're saying that when it was first there were no trees. And so who planted the trees?
It just grows.
They just grew. There's a lot of
Grew.
vegetation around the
Scrub
embankment
trees.
as well,
Yeah.
which has to be removed.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of pine trees along the one embankment. So in order to build, the trail around it, those trees will have to be removed. But they're also planting trees afterwards as well.
I think we will get questions about so many trees coming down when
I'm sure we
that
will.
actually happens. So I think just kind of maybe an explanation on the website or in social media when that project starts would be really helpful.
Sure.
We can do that.
We can do
Yeah.
that. We're more than happy to. And now's the time to do that project because it's coming into the winter months is when
Yes.
you really want to do it.
All right.
I
Any
was
other?
going to ask you about the trees. Come on.
Trees are really
Yes.
good unless they interfere with your stormwater control system.
And if there are pine trees that are suffering the same blight that's killing all the other pine trees in the area?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, anything else for community services?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
All right, environmental services, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I have 2 items this evening for 2 weeks from now. The first is a request for authorization to perform our cured-in-place piping lining work to the township sanitary sewer lines through our sewer capital improvement fund, as per my memo to the manager on September 6th.
Anyone have any questions about that? All right, next item, please.
The next item, a request for the sanitary sewer line replacement between 3059 and 3077 McNeil Road through our sewer capital improvement fund as well, as per a second memo to the manager on September 6th.
Anyone have any questions about this? All right, anything else, Jim?
Project that the plan is coming along well. A lot of concrete poured this week, and we're making progress every day. So,
And I believe we have another tour scheduled in 2 weeks.
I believe so, yes.
We have to set up a personal one for Mrs. Blackburn.
Okay. With pleasure.
I would assume you can do the workshop meeting in October.
Remind me of the date.
October, is that 11th? Yeah. Well, let's put this
Yeah,
one.
that one's fine.
Is that one okay?
Yeah, it's usually the 4th.
Yeah, it's the 4th you can't do.
It's the 4th one I can't
I
do.
know.
Yeah.
But we're prepared to give you one on the,
Yeah,
if
that's
you would
fine.
like one.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for.
And frankly, if any of you you're there, if you want to come at the same time, you're most welcome. We'll be giving 2 tours during the month of October, one on the second Wednesday and one on the 4th Wednesday. Feel free to show up for either one. It'll probably be the same way, 6:30, just a quick walkthrough.
All right, zoning and planning, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. The first item is the request for release of funds from the sanitary bond for the Windmont Farms final conservation subdivision. This was on the agenda in May, and the developer wound up pulling it because they had added 2 unauthorized sanitary private lateral lines within the public right-of-way. So those were not shown on the as-built, they weren't inspected, and they were called out by Mr. Degnan and KLH. Since then, the developer has removed one of the lateral lines, and the other one they added to the as-bills, and KLH has reviewed them. They're okay with it, so back on the agenda at this point, we are ready to release just the sanitary fund. So that will still leave a little over 1.12 million in the general performance bond.
All right, does anyone have any questions? All right, next item, please.
Okay. Well, this is a very long time coming. Last Tuesday, the former Howard Johnson's at 5130 Route 8 abandoned motel was sold to Paramount Construction. It did finally close. So that sold for a little over 1.25 million. As I said, Paramount Construction is going to come in and they're going to develop it as an apartment building. And I talked to the developer. They have decided to demolish the building, so that's good. They had flirted around with renovating it for a little while, and I think they finally on board that is not going to happen, not a good idea. So they're going to demolish it, and he's in the process now of talking to his abatement contractor and getting that process going. So he has a meeting with them Friday. He hopes abatement to start at the beginning of October. He's going to have someone come in and cut the grass just to get the place looking a little bit more presentable this weekend or maybe Monday by the latest. He's also taken over the billing for the security fence around the building, which will remain in place until the demolition begins. So we are moving in the right direction at this point, and if we do not continue to move in the right direction, then I've told him and he understands that all the same notices of violation will just be issued to them, and we'll start that.
Is this a zoning issue or a conditional use situation?
Right now, it's a zoning issue. Once they file application for whatever they wish to do, then you can place conditions of approval based on what she feels appropriate.
Yeah, right now we just want to get the building down, and then he'll have to go through the normal land development process for whatever he would want to put in there.
Any estimates on when the building might come down?
He said he wants to start abatement at the beginning of October, and he also said he wants to do the demolition and the abatement all in one. So he's going to get one permit for both. We had talked about the possibility of doing two, but he said, no, we just want to do it all in one. So he said he's going to try to get that information and permits into me in the next, I would assume, few weeks. So,
Amanda, I would assume he has to do the standard abatement report.
oh yes,
Make sure we have a copy of it to
Yes.
protect us.
yeah.
All right, anyone have any questions? Or comments?
Crossing my fingers.
I think Amanda's up to the job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, she's young enough to be able to
Yeah,
go
you,
through
you
it.
might actually see this building down before you retire.
Michelle and I had this conversation already. Both of us are like, yeah, okay.
We'll see. Like I
Right.
said, we're moving in the right direction. We haven't approached the final destination. A lot we'll see by the beginning of October. If he
Alright.
actually gets that process going and his permits in, I'll feel a lot better.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
I do not.
All right, other business, please.
There's just, besides the items that are on the agenda, there's one other item, and it's my fault. I forgot to include the tennis courts. Those bids are coming in on this month, and you should have a recommendation or report by the end of the month for the meeting. If you remember, there are two alternative approaches, and both are being bid. Besides that, always put a plug in for the Depreciation Land Museum's Hidriff. It's a great event if you have the opportunity to go to it. The Ghost Hunters one's kind of unique too, but the Hidriff one is really great. So,
And I assume they'll be doing the lantern tours again this year.
as far as I know, they are.
All right, and for the farmers market, I believe the last one is October 11th.
That's what I understand.
All right. So anything else?
Arrive early on the 29th at 5 o'clock for Pints in the Park. I'm telling you, if you want to see it, it has turned into a huge, successful program.
Yes.
It is fantastic to watch. It really has worked out very, very well. And since it's the last one, unless it rains, of course it rains, it doesn't make any difference around here. If it rains, they'll still show up. But it was very well attended the last two times.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it'll be a mainstay in our operation. Melanie's over there rolling her eyes. It's a mainstay in our operations for the future. Since I just said it and put it on the record and you're stuck with it. Okay,
Oh,
that's
good.
That's good.
It has been an amazing event. I've been able to go to most of them.
Hey, I do have a question. On social media, I saw a few people asking about the last day at the pool and why the dogs were not invited.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons for that. What a lot of residents don't understand is if we're going to have a dog event at the pool, okay, we have to let the water sit and all the chlorine has to evaporate out. That's the first problem we have. The second problem we have is we have to have the appropriate staffing in place, including the veterinarian, in case something were to happen. That is not easy to do for us. We don't have the staff to do that kind of stuff right now. So that's the reason why we decided we're just weren't going to go there. Now, in the future, hopefully we can reestablish it. We don't know how that will work out, but the water's technically still in the pool. I guess it's starting to drain now. But until all the chlorine comes out of it, you cannot put them in the pool. So that's the reason why we always waited in the past. And I know with the one year we had, it was pretty successful. A lot of
It
residents
was.
really
It was
loved
very successful.
Well, and I think the county park has a pool where they do it as well.
Well, they may have it in North Park Pool. If they do, I don't know
Yeah.
anything about it.
Yeah.
But they may.
So I
they
think
may.
that was part of the reason the questions were asked. Because another.
I don't think that really came into our problem with staffing and how to put everybody in place that we needed for it. Yeah, I know.
All right, does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add to other business? All right, then with that, we'll adjourn this evening's meeting. Thank you everyone for coming tonight.